Welcome to the Explainer. आज हम इस विचार का विश्लेषण करेंगे. That's right. Today we're diving deep, and I mean deep, into the 500-year-old, literally banned secrets of Machiavelli. We're unpacking the hidden laws of wealth and invisible power, the exact same laws that history's absolute most elite figures deliberately kept completely out of sight. Let's get right into it, shall we? So, what is the world's biggest lie? You know the one. We hear it absolutely everywhere. The cliché is that wealthy people get rich purely through, hard work, positive vibes, and those grueling 4 a.m. morning routines. But the real truth? It's wild. Truly wealthy people deliberately hide the actual methods that got them there. And the reason is simple. If they share their real secrets, you become their competition. So they feed you motivational speeches while actively, intentionally hiding the exact mechanics of their success. No way they're giving up the real playbook.
Section 1, The Secret of True Wealth. Right here is where we decode the core philosophy of invisible power.
Rule number 1 is incredibly simple. Be a fox, not a lion. Think about Giovanni de' Medici back in Renaissance Italy. Guy was the wealthiest man in the entire country, secretly controlling the finances of European kings. But if you bumped into him on the street, he wore totally ordinary clothes and lived a remarkably simple life. See, the lion is loud, visible, and flashy, which just makes it a huge target to be hunted. When you post your brand new car or a fancy watch online, you're playing the lion. You're instantly attracting jealous relatives, cutthroat competitors, and people begging for loans. But the fox? The fox stays invisible, completely strategic, and ultimately victorious.
Section 2, The Art of Ruling Secretly. History proves time and time again there is an immense psychological advantage to strategic deception. You've got to hear this brilliant story about Francesco, a textile merchant in Florence. In his very first year, the guy made massive profits, huge. But instead of upgrading his lifestyle, he deliberately wore old, ratty clothes, sat in his exact same tiny shop, and constantly complained to literally everyone that the market was slow and he was barely scraping by. And guess what? It worked like a charm. His competitors thought he was a nobody and entirely ignored him. Suppliers gave him better rates out of sheer pity, and the government completely overlooked his operations. Within 5 years, he secretly became the biggest merchant in the whole city, and nobody even saw it coming. A real game changer.
It all boils down to this absolutely crucial Machiavellian principle. It doesn't matter what you actually are. It matters what people think you are. Think about it. People don't interact with your reality. They interact with your image. If you're rich but appear totally ordinary, you are entirely safe from jealousy and massive expectations. But if you're ordinary and try to look rich, you're suddenly surrounded by threats and people demanding things from you that you can't possibly give. It's a total trap.
$58 billion. Let that number sink in for a second. That was the estimated net worth of IKEA founder Ingvar Kamprad. Keep that massive, absolutely staggering figure in your head as we look at how he actually navigated his everyday life. Despite sitting on a $58 billion fortune, Kamprad drove a 15-year-old Volvo. He flew economy class, actively clipped discount coupons for his groceries, and ate cheap street food. People genuinely laughed at him. They called him a cheap old man. But he wasn't just being cheap. This was a masterclass strategy. He was protecting himself from unwanted attention, jealousy, and those who would instantly try to leech off his wealth. He proved, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that true wealth absolutely does not need to prove itself to anyone.
Section 3. Beware of your own. We've talked a lot about your external image, but now we really need to shift gears to internal defense, and honestly, the uncomfortable truth about hidden enemies.
Let's look at a pretty tragic modern example. In month 1, a Mumbai startup hits a 100 crore valuation. The founder's ecstatic, throws a massive party, invites his whole inner circle, and just starts bragging about his exact future strategies. Well, by month 6, his chief technology officer and marketing head resign, taking those exact same strategies to start rival companies. Fast forward to year 2, and the original company is completely shut down. The guy lost absolutely everything simply because he couldn't keep his mouth shut around his own inner circle.
Which brings us right to this heavy-hitting quote from Sun Tzu, "When strong, appear weak." Machiavelli took this idea even further, basically advising that you must always appear weak until it is far too late for anyone to stop you. The people who don't know about your success, those are the ones who cannot sabotage it. You have to stay completely hidden until you are way too far ahead.
This reveals a really fascinating, kind of dark historical pattern, the fatal trap of looking too smart. During the Renaissance, the absolute smartest, most capable people were often exiled or straight up killed. Why? because a highly competent person is instantly perceived as a threat to the king. When you show off how incredibly smart you are, people in power get really nervous, and they will try to eliminate you way before you can ever replace them.
If we apply this Renaissance history to modern office politics, we get what we call tactical incompetence. Let's say you get a promotion, credit luck, or your boss's kindness. If your business is insanely profitable, downplay it. Tell people you're barely surviving. If you have a brilliant idea, don't just blurt it out. Present it slowly as a group effort. By playing slightly dumb, your competitors lower their guards. They just don't see you as a threat, which allows you to quietly gather the information and leverage that brings actual real power. Section 4. System versus monument. Let me ask you a really provocative question right now. If you stopped working tomorrow, exactly how long could you survive? A week? A month? If your answer is less than a year, you'll want to pay very close attention to this next concept.
Back in Renaissance Italy, the families that built loud monuments, grand palaces and massively expensive celebrations, went completely broke in just a few generations. But the families that quietly built systems, like trade routes, they stayed powerful for centuries. A Ferrari or a Rolex is a monument. It literally just drains your pocket to make you look good to strangers. A dividend portfolio or passive income, now that is a system. It makes money while you sleep and feeds you without you having to lift a finger. You've got to build systems, not monuments.
Because when you focus on flashy monuments instead of quiet systems, you fall right into a very predictable trap. Take the 2017 Bitcoin boom. We saw an investor turn 1 lakh into 5 lakh in just 2 months. Incredible, right? But instead of staying quiet, he was loudly bragging all over Facebook. Literally a month later, relatives were begging him for cash, tax notices arrived at his door, and he even received physical threats. The overwhelming stress led to panic selling and total, utter ruin. A lack of patience and the intense desire for fast, loud money almost always ends in rapid destruction. The real goal here is to build your empire in the shadows, right alongside the invisible string pullers. True power isn't held by the flashy influencer with 5 million followers. They're just the product. True power is held by the silent sponsor behind them, the one actually buying their reach. You need to quietly network with the background players. I'm talking about the quiet chartered accountants, the behind-the-scenes lawyers, and the private bankers.
Section 5. The Empire of Quiet Wealth. This is where we synthesize everything we've learned into one final, absolutely undeniable ethos.
The ultimate Machiavellian takeaway is simply this: money is loud, but wealth is quiet. When you finally stop making all this noise just to prove your status to people who honestly don't actually care, your real work can begin. You step right out of that loud, exhausting rat race of validation, and you step into the quiet, invisible empire where your actual wealth is forged.
So I'll leave you with one final thought. Are you still trying to prove you are rich, or are you ready to actually be rich? Think deeply about that. If this explainer resonated with you today or sparked some curiosity, definitely share it with someone you know who is stuck in that loud hustle culture. Change your approach today. Keep quiet, build your systems in the shadows, and win. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you next time.